Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, it's Jory Rose. Thanks so much for tuning into today's podcast episode, as I know that you're going to love this really insightful and helpful conversation with mindfulness teacher Cory Muscara. He's been on the podcast before, and today's episode is actually another one of the incredible Surviving to Thriving Summit interviews that I just knew I wanted my podcast audience to be able to check out. And there's another really exciting reason why I'm bringing this episode on right now. It's because I'm about to release a really big, exciting offer, and it's all about how to bring more mindfulness into your life. So I'm bringing on today's episode to get you excited. So stay tuned to the next handful of episodes in which I share more of this with you. But if you're looking for tools to be more mindful, which means paying more attention to every aspect of your life in the intention to be more present, to decrease stress, anxiety, worry, to be happier, to be more grateful, more compassionate, you're going to have the chance to work directly with me. So stay tuned and enjoy today's episode. Be well. I'm really pleased to welcome what I will consider a friend, because we've known each other for years, even though it's been a while since our paths have physically crossed, but fellow mindfulness teacher, Cory Muscara. Cory, thank you so much for coming on today, and I really appreciate you sharing all your gifts. So please tell our viewers about yourself and what magic do you bring to the world?
Oh, wow.
No pressure there, huh?
Yeah. Hi everyone. It's nice to be with you. I've been teaching mindfulness for about 10 years now. Newest project that I'm excited about is co-host of mindfulness.com, and wrote a book called Stop Missing Your Life recently, all about presence and the power of presence in our life.
Can I pause there for a second?
Sure.
You guys, you have to get Cory's book. So it's really a phenomenal book. I'm really proud of what you produced. I'm a little bit jealous I didn't write it. And I say that with the most honor of, you teach mindfulness in such a very straightforward, practical, beautifully attainable approach, and really hold deep integrity in its foundation. And that's sometimes a hard thing to bridge.
Yeah.
And I've referred it to clients and my, group that I lead in meditation, and it's really spot on. So really well done. Because I think last time we spoke, I hadn't read the whole thing yet. So I just need to give you the shout out, and for you guys to say, hey, go buy Cory's book. You won't regret it.
I love it. I love getting plugs within the first 30 seconds.
I can't help it. I mean, if I'm going to believe in it, I'm going to push it out there, because it's on brand for me to support.
Yeah, thank you.
But it's really integrity with how I like to teach mindfulness as well. So it feels so good to know the ways I describe it are the ways you describe it. It's really validating in the field of mindfulness. The more teachers we have, the better everyone benefits.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's a good segue into what it is I do. And if there is any magic in it, I think it's taking deep ideas, deep wisdom, and translating it and them in very practical and relatable ways.
Yeah.
There's a lot that I teach that is nothing new. I mean, there have been meditation teachers for thousands of years, people talking about presence for thousands of years. So it's not like me or you, I or you invented any of this. It's kind of like how we take that wisdom, how we embody it ourselves, and how we try to make it more accessible for more people. And that has been really my life's work. I love and I live for creating that bridge for someone that wouldn't typically be receptive to this stuff. And it's not to be evangelical, because I don't believe in enforcing it on anyone. It's just that I think the biggest barrier for a lot of people is not understanding what it is, why it might be relevant to them, and that they can do it and they can access it. When you really start getting into at least just basic mindfulness, it's not really something that you're into or you're not into. It's kind of like saying, like, are you into living your life or not? Everyone has access to this like baseline of awareness and can become more intimate with their experience. And so I'm interested in both the beginning stages of that, of like what actually gets someone into this, and then also like for those that want to go deeper, the whole universe that is through that initial door.
I love that. People often say to me, like, and again, this is one of those myths that prevents people from starting often, is I don't have time to practice mindfulness. And I very compassionately and jokingly will respond, well, you got time to be stressed. You got time to be angry. Like, understand, we're not trying to create new time. We're trying to shift our energy in the time that we already have. And it's responding differently to what's arising. So I think this is a great opportunity for you to explain to our viewers who maybe aren't as familiar with what mindfulness is. How do you describe it? How do you teach it? What's a beginning way to, did we get? You know, it's so interesting. I often have people say to me, you know, I don't have time to practice mindfulness. And I will very compassionately and kind of jokingly respond of, you got time to be angry, or you got time to be stressed. So why don't you choose a different response to the way you're already spending your time? Yeah. So I think it's a good segue into, how do you define for someone who maybe is just beginning, what does it really mean to practice mindfulness?
Yeah. Well, let me start by saying how someone that maybe doesn't have time, or is like, you know what, the only time I get is when it's like after a long day and I'm exhausted, I'm shot. It's like the only 20 minutes where the kids are finally to bed and I just want to veg out on the couch. Yeah. And there's a pushback of like, I don't want to fit in another like thing to do. I don't want to meditate. And I
have to add one more thing to my to-do list, right?
Yeah, right. And I so resonate with that. And so, you know, one suggestion would be is to just don't worry about doing it in addition or separate from what you're doing. Just blend it into what you're already doing. If the thing you want to do is to veg out on the couch, then just bring a little bit more mindfulness and awareness to that experience. And I recognize we haven't really identified or defined what mindfulness is, but let's just make it very simple and look at it as more presence in your life. The opposite of that might be living on automatic pilot, completely caught up and lost in the thoughts and the emotions and the story, or zoning out. You can actually zone out with awareness. You can be in a vegged out state with awareness. You can be watching TV with awareness. And so whatever it is that you want to do, let's say, is that like that numbing experience, I just don't want to do anything. Cool. Do nothing. And then just be a little bit more aware of what that is like.
So can I give a practical example of how I do that?
Sure.
We all get in the habit of scrolling on our phones. These digital devices are the most perfect distractions, and also can be perfect devices for being mindful if we choose to engage in it in such a way. And I was recognizing where I was judging myself for the scrolling. And I realized I was judging because I was doing it mindlessly. And at the end of the day, I like to play some games on my phone to wind down. And I realized I was judging that it was a mindless behavior. And I switched my energy to it to say, let me be more aware that this is a calming activity for me. This is a time to not have to be fully engaged mentally or physically. And as soon as I recognized for me when it wasn't serving me, when I was getting completely lost in the distraction of it, then I'm like, now it's not serving me as a practice.
Yeah. Yes.
And it like all of a sudden I gave myself permission to play games on my phone for 10 minutes without judging myself. But I shifted my relationship to how I engaged in it. And once it became fully mindless, I'm like, now it's not serving me. Now I think it's time for bed. Yeah. And I was still being mindless, but I was doing it with awareness.
Yes.
And my whole judgment on myself of, I'm wasting time went away.
Yeah.
Versus, wow, look at this gift of time I'm giving myself to relax and play this game. This feels so nice.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that.
It's so simple, right?
Very simple. And so I think for most people, like, let's say someone is listening right now, if you've never heard of mindfulness and you're just trying to explore like what might be the benefits of it, like why is this important? I don't think we have to look too much further than our own experience and the world around us just to see what it's like to live mindlessly.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are going through their lives, waking up in the morning, going to bed, and then you kind of just like have a moment to relax. Then you're like, what just happened the last 16, 18 hours of my life? And many people go days, weeks, months, or decades like that. So there's just one argument of like, this is an opportunity to live your life more intimately, to actually be there while it's showing up. And for many people, that's compelling enough. But for others, it might be like, all right, like I need to, like, what does this actually do for me? Okay, I get it, be present, important, whatever.
But why does this matter? Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so it turns out like this quality of awareness isn't just something that accompanies you. It's like, oh, now I know what I'm doing. But it's a tool that can help us actually shift from surviving to thriving.
Yeah.
And if you look at like, what does it mean to survive? Like the image that comes to my mind is just like kind of drowning in a pool and like flailing, trying to just keep my head above water. And I think most of us know the experience of like kind of drowning in our own thoughts and our own emotions and our own circumstances.
Yeah.
And we're very good as humans, like to compartmentalize or to numb or to pretend like it's not going on. But when we really get honest with ourselves, a lot of times we'll just see like, whoa, there is so much here.
Yeah.
And so mindfulness is a way for us to sort of step back. I'm going to give two ways to think of it, like step back from our experience. So if you think of like a river going down a mountain, we could be caught up in the river, smashing into the white water, the rocks, or we could be sitting on the bank of the river, watching it go by. So same river, same you, different relationship, different experience. The first big thing that mindfulness allows us to do is just like to actually step back from our experience in such a way that we're not consumed by it. And it turns out that while that is a process and something we practice, it's accessible for everyone. We all have that capacity of awareness. We're just so distant from it because we're used to being consumed by our thoughts.
We're so in it, it's hard to see it.
Exactly. And so a basic meditation practice where you might focus on your breath and then notice the mind wander and then come back to the breath. Well, you're training your attention in a very particular way, but you're also training yourself to see, oh, the thoughts can arise, but I don't have to follow that or get consumed by that. I could just notice and come back.
Or believe the thoughts or get over identified by the thoughts. And this is where people, I think, really get stuck.
Yes.
And that's the why. That's the benefit. It's, hey, you can have all the thoughts you want and you have freedom from not having to be attached to them. Like that in and of itself is so huge when people connect with that ability.
Yes. And that's the variable, in my opinion, that when influence changes it from surviving to thriving, because the difference is like I'm stuck in this stream wherever it's going to take me, and sometimes the moments are good, but sometimes they're bad, and I'm just going along for the ride. To actually seeing, well, something can arise, and I could choose how I respond to it, and that choice is the thing that conditions what will happen next, even if it's just being able to find a little bit more peace within the dis-ease.
Yeah. I love visuals. Do you know, and I'm sure you do, but I'm going to say it anyway for all the viewers. So I'm going to have you do it along with me. Do you know the whole cup exercise?
Say more.
Okay. So for all of you guys watching, this is one of my most absolute favorite ways to teach and talk about what mindfulness is. So if you have something to hold nearby, pick it up. So Cory, I know you have water there. Okay. So we're picking up our water. Here we got our waters. So if I were to ask, and all you guys watching, go grab something. So if you hold it up, and don't rest your hand on anything, like actually hold it. And if I were to say to you, how much does it weigh? A pound, half a pound, depending on how much water is still in there. Okay, maybe 2 pounds. Is it heavy? Maybe, maybe not. If you were to hold it for a minute, would it be heavy? Maybe. If I said, Cory, I'm going to have you hold this cup for the entire remainder of this interview. Would it be heavy?
Yeah.
And you're probably like, yeah, if I had to hold it for the next 35 minutes, yeah, this is going to get pretty damn heavy. Does the actual weight of it change? No. So the moral of the story is the longer we hold on to something, the heavier it is to carry.
That's good.
It's good, right? But we go through life holding it, going, why me? Why this? This is so hard. This sucks. Why, why? And we forget that we have an option. So now everyone put down the cup and now look at it. The cup hasn't disappeared. It's still there. So we're not denying, resisting, or ignoring the cup. We have simply shifted our relationship to it. And now by putting it down, not only am I in less suffering from holding what's heavy, but I now have this choice to say, oh, wow, look, there's this cup here. What do I want to do with it? Because I can easily now just say, well, it's just a cup. Versus I'm a bad person because I can't handle holding my cup. Look at my inner critic telling me to, and I love that exercise.
Yeah.
And that's to me the shifting the relationship of being in the river or on the riverbanks.
Yes.
So thanks for engaging in our exercise, everyone. That's your Mindfulness 101 lesson of the day, aside from, everything else. But it's powerful.
Yeah, I think it's powerful to also feel the difference between like the heaviness of holding and then what it's like to release. And it is what it's like to let go of trying to control everything or being consumed by an emotion. And it's not the experience themselves, but it's how we relate to it that is going to condition what the experience is. And there is a way to relate to even very difficult emotions from a place of spaciousness and surrender. But the trying to control it, push it, fight it, change it, fix it, all of that creates that tension. It's the gripping of the water bottle. It's holding it higher and higher.
Yeah. And I think right now, I mean, I've said this many times throughout the summit, so it really is fitting to say it here again, but I really, and this is not the spiritual bypassing response. I really feel that part of what the universe is calling upon all of humanity right now is to say, hey guys, it's time to practice mindfulness. Like if it's ever had its heyday, it's now.
Yeah.
Because no one is immune from the stress and anxiety and fear and overwhelm that this pandemic is bringing. So we all have a choice right now to practice. How are we going to respond to all of this? Okay, so it's here. Here's like this big, heavy cup. The whole world is holding at the same time. And so how are we going to do this? So what are some ways that you have, you mentioned a moment ago, through really difficult challenges, guide the people you work with and in the meditations that you lead? What are some, when someone's really angry, because it might be hard to access the resource to sit on the riverbank. When you're really angry. So what are some ways that you really feel people can tap into that greater awareness or greater compassion during a really stressful time?
Yeah. So much of it depends on like what the stress is or what the emotion is, but there are some baseline experiences or practices we can do that sort of address the whole system. I think one of the things the pandemic is inviting for all of us is a much greater stillness and attuning. So, you think of any musician. John Kabat-Zinn talks about this quite a bit. He's like the granddaddy of mindfulness in the West. But how any musician, when they take out their instrument, the first thing they do before they play a note is just tune the instrument, because it changes overnight. The temperature impacts it, where it was stored, outside, inside, the humidity in the space. So all of that needs to be taken into account. But as human beings, there just tends to be this expectation that we're going to show up the same way every day, and that we should show up.
Much easier if we could.
Yeah, it would be. But we're wild beings, and it just doesn't work like that. Of course, like over the course of years, it doesn't work like that. But even day to day, our circadian rhythms are shifting, our internal emotions, our experiences, the weather. So it all has an impact, and that does kind of require and each day sort of tuning into your instrument and playing it, retuning it to be played. I think many of us have tuned our instruments 10, 15, 20 years ago, and we're still trying to play it at the same whatever. And so this is a really cool opportunity to actually just, if you have the time to stop. I know that many people are probably working harder than ever. But even within that, we can take some time each day to tune, to stop. And what it looks like very basically is, you wake up in the morning, and even while you're under your covers, put one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. If that feels too weird, don't put it on your hand on your belly. Just lay down, and keep your eyes closed as you're starting to wake up, and just ask yourself, what is it like to be me today? What do I feel? What's my energy level? What's my emotional state? What thoughts are going on in my mind? And you're not doing it to evaluate it as right or wrong.
Like we're not doing an assessment of, hey, this is good or bad.
Exactly. And same with the thoughts. If even if the thoughts are ruminating around something that happened yesterday, at least there's so many ways to relate to thoughts. And one of them is changing the thoughts, redirecting the attention. But when you're tuning, you're just getting to know yourself. And so just what's lingering? What's the residue? You might perceive it as something off, why is my brain broken? It's thinking about something that happened 5 years ago. But, especially in this context where there's a little bit more space and things are standing still, a lot that we've suppressed over the course of months and years will start to come to the surface. And I'm seeing this with a lot of my students, who are feeling like their sleep is off, their emotions are off, they're just off in general. What's going on? Why is this happening? It's not so much that anything's off. It's just the stuff that was beneath the surface is finally getting the chance to be seen, felt, and integrated.
The phrase that I've been saying for that is, whatever was once under a flashlight of awareness is now under a floodlight of awareness.
Yeah, well said.
And thank you. And it also feels like, especially in relationships, I'm seeing this with a lot of clients, anything that was just bubbling under the surface that maybe you've been able to kind of keep under the radar, it feels like right now we can't hide it anymore, right? The covers have been pulled back. The rug has been lifted from what we've been putting under the rug. And it's been exposed in a different way, because I think all of our healthy defenses, and even some unhealthy defenses, maybe stopping at the bar on the way home, or even just going to the gym, going to a yoga class, going out for girls' night out, going out for Taco Tuesday, going to a concert, going to a sporting event, all the things that we've been able to stay distracted by, whether again, positive or negative, or we're going to label them, we can't do.
Yeah.
And so we are really, even if you're not in stillness and you're busier than ever, we still can't hide from what's there.
Yes.
So it's great, let's look at it, because it's still not going anywhere.
Yeah, right. It's a real call to move toward wholeness.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel good at first. And a lot of it, the whole thing is jarring, because it is much of real life for many of us these days is being on one of those conveyor belts at the airport that just helps you get places faster. And we're just used to moving on hyperspeed and everything going quickly, and we've adjusted to that way of living.
Yeah.
And this shelter in place is sort of it's stepping off of that conveyor belt. And when you step
or
off,
it's being thrown off the back of the treadmill, and the treadmill, you're you're flailing.
Exactly.
That's the image I have, is someone who just flew off the back, and you're wait, where'd he go?
Yes. And that comes with a temporary period of what just happened.
Yeah.
And you're still feeling the previous energy in your body, which had a lot of forward momentum and had a particular agenda of getting somewhere. And so the stopping of that is an abrupt shift, but you eventually find new grounding. And since it's a slower place, you start becoming more aware of things, colors, your partner. And this is where relationships can get complicated.
Yeah.
You have to face things maybe you haven't faced in a while. You see things about yourself in relationship or the other person in relationship. And so it's just like the slowing down. There's a reason we tend to stay busy or get in the habit of busyness, is because it often protects us from having to face some real things in our life. But if you're willing to walk through the fire and see this as an opportunity, in my opinion, it's the only path to a deep form of contentment and well-being. The rest is just like, you just go with the flow while things are good and hope that in all the busyness, there's going to be little dopamine hits here and there. And as long as everything just stays the way I want it to, then I'll be happy. But it's just a facade. Like now we're being shown the reality, which is that we don't have nearly as much control as we think. And
I was just going to say the same thing. I think it's been this huge unveiling of all of our safety and security was a mere perception of safety and security.
Yeah. And
the more we can be in the present moment, the more we're okay with whatever the present moment brings, because we didn't have control over it anyways.
Yeah, right.
It's all a perception. So we're all awake now to the realities of our lives in a way maybe most of us haven't had to face our entire lifetime.
Yes. And so that's a training, right? This, like, the learning to be in the present moment with more of that equanimity and creating an internal sense of safety, or being okay not having control, that comes through time. And so the meditation practice, on probably the deepest level, it is that training. And so for someone listening that wants to figure out how to start that, one, there are endless resources out there for mindfulness meditation,
and you're like half of them right now.
yeah, and I'm 50% of them on the internet. But a simple way you do it without subscribing to anything is just try 100 breaths for 100 days. It takes about 10 to 12 minutes. You sit down and just practice bringing your attention to the fact that you're breathing. One hand on your belly, feeling the inhale, feeling the exhale. Now, what's going to happen with that is, the hard part is not paying attention to the breath. You could do it right now as you're listening. Just feel the inhale, feel the exhale. I inherently
started doing that as you talked. I just tuned in.
Right. So we could all do it. It's just the difficult part is like doing that more than 2 seconds.
Right.
And then the mind, like, it's going to get caught up in all of its past conditioning, all of the thoughts, anything going on in your day, any like discomfort, itches, boredom. And so the work there is not the paying attention to the breath, but it's feeling all the ways that the mind gets seduced and distracted. And in those moments, the training is to see that dispersion, and to feel like the energy that's pulling you in that direction. It's going to feel strong. It's very seductive. The mind is extremely powerful. And you just take a breath and you just practice letting go and coming back to just this breath. And you just see, can I just do it for one more moment? Inhale, exhale. And then maybe you get another one and another one, and the mind goes off again. And so the more the tension that is created in our life is all of this scatteredness, where the mind can't actually be settled in the present. When it does come to the present, it's very uncomfortable at first, because it's used to being able to do whatever it wants. But the doing whatever it wants is the thing that is ending like creating a lot of extra stress. So there's a period where that training is a little uncomfortable, but over time, I keep using the word energy, but let's just say the intensity of the things pulling you away.
Right.
The more you get to watch that and not react to it, the more they lose their intensity.
They lose the power.
And that's what then allows you to go through life without always feeling the pull by the thoughts and the emotions. You've conditioned the brain to, in a default way, respond differently. And so the baseline nervous system activity is different. And the baseline well-being can exist independent of everything having to be perfectly manufactured. And that's one of the promises of the practice.
And it's true. And it's strengthening the conditioning of your brain to, just like any other muscle in your body, to just say, oh, look, there that is. Okay, so there it is. And just come back. I once was giving a talk at a Rotary Club, and this guy came up to me at the end, and all he said, like, he didn't say anything other than this, and I just cracked up, and I've been saying it ever since. He said, mindfulness is like having an itch and choosing not to scratch it. And then he walked away.
That's great.
But it's just like, oh yeah, look at that sensation. Okay, just because it's there, I don't have to do anything about it. It's
Yeah.
just a sensation. It's how I label it. It's how I attach to it. It's how I get angry at it. It's how I react to it. That's where it becomes a big deal. Otherwise, it's just a sensation.
Yeah.
Or just a thought or just an emotion.
And itch is a great thing to practice. And it's a great example of like, right, who cares if you scratch the itch? It like doesn't matter. I scratch itches all the time. But periodically I want to see, like, can I actually be with this? And the reason it's a good training is because they're low stakes, right? You're
right
there. If you don't scratch the itch for 5 minutes and it's annoying the crap out of you, you're not going to die and you're not going to end up with some sort of trauma. It's just going to be really uncomfortable. So you get to practice with the primal parts of the brain saying, like, you need to take care of this, and practice relaxing into those. And you do that not because you're never going to scratch an itch again, but because that training of the brain to respond differently ends up giving you a new baseline level of peace that you can live with the rest of your life. Because again, the agitation is coming from the mind neurotically thinking, I have to take care of this. But when you be with it and you practice not fueling that, then that neurotic, like, needing to control everything starts to subside, and in its place is an ease within dis-ease. So it's a very logical, practical map for cultivating more equanimity and peace in your life amid discomfort. And it can start with simple things like working with an itch, because it's the neuroses. It's not about the experience. It's about the neuroses in relationship to the experience. And you could train that with an itch or the boredom or the loneliness you're feeling in COVID-19.
Yeah, you'll appreciate this example as well. I think I once was leading a meditation. I got asked to come. I'm in the Bay Area, and there's a national lab called Lawrence Livermore Lab that I think produces nuclear weapons and, things like that, kind of not too far from where I live. But they've had a 10-year run of a meditation group. So they were getting people to come in and guide meditations for this meditation group they've had there. So really a neat place with these top scientists, right, to do meditation with. And I even think they had Sharon Salzberg there. So I was really honored of, kind of being in the mix of some great meditation teachers. And we're assembling in the room. And one of the founders of this group stood on a chair and reached up and grabbed the clock off the wall and went and put the clock in the other room in the lobby, and then came back to assemble in our room. And I just noted, that's really interesting. I noticed he took the clock off the wall. He says, oh yeah, that the clock is way too distracting for meditation. Mm-hmm. And I very kind of, again, jokingly and compassionately said, well, perhaps you haven't really learned how to meditate then if you can't sit in a room with the clock. Like, actually the clock is the most perfect thing to be sitting with, because the more distraction it is, the more opportunity you have to practice. Yeah. If you remove all distractions, guess what? It's going to be really easy, but life isn't that simple.
Yeah, right.
So it's not about just being in a quiet, Zen-like, peace-like environment and then just breathing, because that's not going to be conducive to when the shit hits the fan of a world pandemic or argument with your partner or the kid's temper tantrum or your own internal distracting, mind. So that the noise is going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I still kind of laugh at that, but I think it's a great reminder that we want to create the conditions that make it easy, and yet life isn't always going to reflect that.
Yeah, the biggest teachers I've had on retreats have been squeaky fans, flickering lights, faulty air conditioning, people breathing loudly. It's just, Gil Fronsdale, a meditation teacher in the Bay Area, says, or he says his teacher used to say, you don't have to try and create suffering for yourself, but when it arises, don't run away from it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good lesson.
Yeah. And I think right now the theme of your book of Stop Missing Your Life is really so apropos. So speak a little bit more in what you mean by stop missing your life.
Yeah. Two things. There's the more intuitive one that I think many of us think of when we hear that title, which is like just the idea that a lot of us are running around with our heads down. Yeah. and you walk through the streets in any big city, and you do see most people looking at their phones, which I don't push against too much. Like I get it, but I also do it, and I don't know what they're looking at. Their world might be actually really quite wonderful in that phone. So there are a lot of ways to be present for your life, and just because you're on your phone doesn't mean you're not. But I think that's what a lot of us think of, just like rushing to the next thing. And there's a lot to be said for that being true, and that taking away a lot of rich experience of life. Mm-hmm. So part of the book is just like reconnecting people to the pulse of their own life, so they don't get to the end of their life and feel like they missed the whole thing.
Yeah.
More deeply though, and what's closer to my heart is it's a book about moving toward wholeness. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the missing we do of our lives is like we shut down different parts of ourselves that we don't deem safe to experience or worthy of experiencing. And this could include certain emotions, mm-hmm. Thoughts, or just different ways that we express ourselves. And we cast those into the shadows, and we sort of just live a partially full kind of life. And we hang out in the areas that make us feel comfortable and do the things that make us feel okay, when there's really just this much richer depth of experience that we can feel. And I've done a lot of studies related to happiness, and a lot of my work is in the world of positive psychology, which is the science of happiness. And the biggest thing that I really see that moves the needle for people is just moving toward greater experiences of wholeness. And systematically what that means is just like continuing to look in to yourself and see like, what parts of myself do I disown? Do I not like? Do I not feel comfortable bringing to the surface? And making some progress and allowing that, inviting that into your awareness with compassion. Doesn't mean you need to show everyone. But there's a difference between stuffing it in your subconscious and holding it in awareness in such a way that it's welcomed and invited as a part of the larger you. Yeah. There are some parts that's easier to do with, and other parts that is very difficult. But if we don't do that, the subconscious experience of it's just going to be subconsciously anchoring us to a certain way of being and a limited expression of ourselves. And that's where we get stuck in a big way. So that stop missing your life is pointing to like the richness of what we can experience when we let down some of those walls and the guarding that we've put up over the course of a lifetime.
And that's a really scary journey to go on.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, so you and I were on retreat together. I believe it was March or February 2012, I think it was. John Kabat-Zinn retreat. And I had an awareness on that retreat that I had, up to that point in my life, and I was in my mid-30s, I had thought my emotions. I hadn't actually felt my emotions, and specifically the emotion of love. Love was a cognitive experience. Mm-hmm. And I remember having this conversation with two friends I had met there, in kind of like a holy shit, like that is huge to realize I've been so detached from an experiential sensation and beautiful emotion in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And, I was missing a huge part of my own life.
Yeah.
And I had a choice. I can continue living in that detachment, or a perception of ease, which was a perception of ease on some level, or I could do the hard work and get still and get out of those thoughts and get into my body, and then be willing to embrace whatever I uncovered.
Yeah.
It was not an easy or, straightforward line, as it never is.
Yeah.
But it was sure as hell worth it. Mm. But on the forefront, it's like, holy shit, that's really scary to sit with myself. What am I going to uncover? What do I do if I have to make a scary choice as a result of this? Yeah, well, it will lead you toward wholeness, like you're saying.
Yeah.
It might be scary, but if you're uncovering it, it's likely because it needs to be uncovered.
Yes. Yeah, well put. Now, that's where the real work begins. It's not the sitting down and enjoying the pleasantness of like peace and not having to do anything. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's great to reinforce that for yourself. But where you really make some big shifts is when you start doing that work.
And I think that's the definition of growth through adversity. I mean, just the symbol of meditation being the lotus growing in the mud, right? It needs the mud to get the beauty. So we need to be willing to sit in our own shit to discover the beauty of all of our uniqueness and wholeness and self-compassion and quieting that inner critic.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Sit in your own shit.
And yet many of us right now, we're being forced to have to do that.
Yeah.
So I have Cory Muscara, his top 3 tips for how to survive right now in the pandemic.
All right. So the first 2 are going to be very basic little hacks that you can use in a few moments that will kind of take you out of the chaos of your mind and back into what is actually here. So the first will be an exercise called Take 5, which is a fan favorite. So we'll do it together. You take out your left hand like this, your right pointer finger, place in the palm of your hand right around your wrist. And we're going to slide our pointer finger up the thumb, taking an inhale through the nose. So breathing in, back down, exhale through the mouth. Up the pointer finger, inhale, back down, middle finger, inhale, back down, exhale, ring, back down, and pinky, back down. Cool. Let's take 5. Very simple. Doesn't take more than about 25 seconds. The tactile nature of it and synced up with the breath seems to be very settling for the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you find yourself like caught up in overwhelm and stress and tension, just take 5, which is not 5 minutes. It's only about 25 seconds.
Yeah.
And you'll find yourself come back into a more grounded state. And kids love it too. So if you have kids, please share it with them. The next is more of a cognitive hack, shifting your what ifs to what is. A lot of the extra stress we cause for us is from the what if mind. What if this happens? What if that goes wrong? How long is this going to last? What if this? What if that? What if? And the what if mind can help us prepare. It can be useful, but a lot of times it's just meaningless, neurotic chatter. So when you find yourself caught up in it in a negative way, just shift the what if to what is.
Yeah.
And, in this moment, for me, it's like, okay, there's a roof over my head. I feel my feet on the ground, feel in my body. I feel well fed. Temperature feels good. And usually what we're going to see is that once we drop into the actual sensory experience, what is actually here, it's a little less of a catastrophe than our mind is making it out to be.
Yeah.
So just another way to reground us.
Yeah.
The last one is less of a simple hack and more of something that I think is worth continuing to explore during your day in this time, which is to learn about and follow your own rhythms. One of the things that COVID-19 is making more available for people is just space and time to craft their schedules. And obviously with kids and depending on your job, there's going to be some elements obviously without your control, but the time you go to bed, when you wake up, there's more flexibility here. And we tend to spend a lot of our life in a narrative around what those rhythms should be. I'm a 9 to 5 person. I go to bed at 10. I wake up at 5. I have my coffee and kiss the kids and out the door. And then on the weekends, I go out and so and the mind is very powerful in that way. And like our circadian rhythms will adapt a bit to that and make it so that we can flow with it. But one of the things I'm finding, and a lot of people are finding right now, is especially with sleep. I haven't set an alarm in 6 weeks, and I always thought I was a 7-hour a night sleeper, and that's been my story for 10 years, and it works relatively well for me. But now that I'm not setting an alarm, I'm going to bed when I want. I find I'm waking up almost an hour later, but I feel more refreshed. I feel more at peace. I feel more grounded. And I was initially thinking like, all right, there's just something going on with being indoors more. And that could be the case. But in hearing this from more and more people, I do think there are two things happening. One, I think there's a restoration that's going on, that a long overdue restoration.
Yes.
But I think a lot of us are realizing, my natural rhythms, what my body actually needs, is different than what I've been telling myself for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So as you continue being in this space and being confused and falling out of your normal routine, see if you can trust those momentary seeds of interest and drive as they arise, and just practice following them and see where they take you. If it takes you to a nap for a period of time, see if you can do it. Even if it goes against your 20-year rule of like, I'm not a nap taker.
But Cory, I only nap when I'm pregnant. That's my story.
Me too. So it's just like, it's worth putting some of that aside and seeing what wants to emerge in this new space. It's like clearing the soil and seeing what seeds were there that actually can now sprout, that weren't sprouting before because we kept putting them away.
I love that. Those are great. And the hope is that we can harness that back into our everyday life in whatever new normal will emerge, because I think we're gaining some really deep wisdom right now.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. My daughters and I last night, we had a conversation at dinner. What am I going to miss most during quarantine when it's over? Because there's so many gifts. It's so easy to focus on. But one of the things what came up was exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is this freedom of our schedule and how much better we're feeling.
Yes. Yes.
And so that's just great to notice. What we do with it when school starts up, we'll worry about that later. Right now, just allow your body to have that restoration and that reset. And so for someone who wants to learn more about you and your work, please share how to best find you and what they can do to practice more of this beautiful mindfulness practice that you are guiding so many in doing. I know you've got lots of meditations available, but what is the best resource for you?
Yeah. So if anyone wants free resources, guided meditations, and mindfulness starter kit, you just text your email address to +1 631 405 4631, and that'll send you an email with all of those resources. If you're interested in mindfulness.com, you get a big discount on that. Go to mindfulness.com/Cory. And that's where the majority of my meditations are right now. There's a daily video and a daily meditation of different lengths, and awesome way to get started. And then I'll be doing a lot more on Instagram, including some live meditations. So Instagram at Cory Muscara, you can find me there.
Fantastic, Cory. It's always so wonderful to connect. And thank you for being a part of this summit and for being such a beautiful teacher in this field of mindfulness. It's really refreshing, I think, to see some younger teachers and being really relatable. And I think that's such a needed, we just need more, right? Because
to continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditation, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat. Visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.